The Great Khans are a tribal faction within the Fallout series that are one of the most fleshed out tribal groups seen in the post-apocalyptic world. The Great Khans seen in Fallout New Vegas will be the main subject of this video, but it would be remiss to not mention their previous iterations, the Khans of Fallout 1 and the new Khans of Fallout 2. Through their various appearances, they have helped shape the events of the Wasteland. The raids, kidnappings, and eventual defeat of the Khans in Fallout 1 and 2 helped lead to the formation of the New California Republic. The Great Khan mercenaries were instrumental in capturing the Courier and beginning the events of New Vegas. As a faction, the Khans are only beaten by the Brotherhood of Steel and the Enclave in terms of how many appearances they've made to the series. So join me today as we take a look at this brutal and unforgiving tribe. From a design perspective, the Great Khans are seen as an amalgamation of the Mongols under Genghis Khan and American biker gangs, having aptly been based off a real-world biker gang, the Mongols. True to this inspiration, the Great Khans live in Mongolian-styled yurts, an easily transportable construct that typically contains nothing more than a few bedrolls and maybe a fire lit within the centre. A Great Khan will usually carry all of their possessions with them, such as their weaponry, food, and armour, in order to maintain flexibility and speed in their raids. However, Great Khan encampments are typically well fortified and well stocked, allowing raiding parties to quickly replenish their stores before returning into the field. Loyalty, honour, and strength are very important within the Great Khans. The coming of age process and initiation into the group espouses these ideals more than anything else. The member in question puts their trust in the Khans and is beaten by each member of the tribe savagely. If they survive, they rise as a Great Khan and assume a new name. If they die, they prove that they were never strong enough for the tribe anyway. Scott Campbell, one of the designers from Fallouts 1 and 2, had imagined that the tough and lawless nature of this group would enable them to thrive and survive in the Wasteland compared to other groups. And this is evidently true, as the story of the Khans within the Fallout series is one of cyclical destruction and rebirth. The group is unique in Fallout New Vegas in that nearly every single one of their ending slides entails either their swift or eventual destruction, no matter if they side with the Legion or NCR. Despite this, they are also one of the only groups who are able to achieve a happy ending if encouraged to abandon the Mojave entirely if their leader is convinced to seek a new future unburdened by the past. The endgame slides indicate that the Great Khans carve a mighty empire out of the ruins of Wyoming, with the assistance of the followers of the Apocalypse, and Papa Khan fulfilling his wish to leave a legacy of greatness for the Great Khans. As a prehistory, the Khans were originally one of the emerging groups from Vault 15. After leaving the safety of the Vault in 2141, the Khans swiftly adapted to life in the Waste, applying a Darwinian approach to the New World. The strong survive, the weak perish. They came to be feared by the Wasteland communities and other tribes of the East Coast, as the group would pillage others for loot and slaves, while decimating any opposition. However, by the year of 2161, 20 years after their founding, the Khans faced their first defeat. A war chief by the name of Garl Deathhand had tormented California, pillaging communities to the point of complete devastation. In one of these raids, however, he kidnapped a woman named Tandy, whose father sent the player character, the Vault Dweller, to rescue her. The Khans were stated to have been nearly destroyed in the process, with Garl Deathhand dying and his son Darian remaining as the only true Khan left, swearing revenge against the woman he felt had destroyed his people. Nearly 80 years later, in 2241, in the events of Fallout 2, the new leader of the Khans, Darian, enacted his power play to take revenge against Tandy, now President Tandy of the New California Republic. While the original members of the Khans had been eliminated, Darian was able to bring back the group from the dead, recruiting members and espousing the culture and ideals of the Khans to them. These new recruits embraced the warrior lifestyle quickly, with future leader Papa Khan being a fervent follower of Darian's. The Khans under his rule differed from other tribes, however. Darian was a man of immense force of will. He established a base of operations in the ruins of Vault 15, with squatters and displaced wastelanders recruited to maintain an image of a functional community. In reality, he had created a military base right on the doorstep of the NCR, even going as far as to plant a spy in their Congress. However, he was eventually made undone by the very woman he sought to destroy. In an effort to obtain computer parts from Vault 15, the Chosen One, under orders from Tandy, infiltrated the vault and led its squatters in rebellion against Darian's tyranny. Darian was killed in this conflict, with many of his Khan soldiers murdered by the people that they had suppressed. The survivors scattered across the wasteland, seeking refuge in the more untamed locations of the West. In 2267, the Khans chose to leave the misery of California behind and journeyed to the Mojave Wasteland under the leadership of Papa Khan. Assuming the name the Great Khans, the Khans quickly became one of the most dominant forces in the region and enjoyed a renaissance period. Once more, their martial prowess and brutal raiding parties allowed them to reign supreme, taking all they wanted from those too weak to protect themselves. Calling themselves the Flails of God, they terrorized the tribes of the Mojave and led assaults against NCR citizens who had traveled from California in search of riches. However, in doing so, the Khans spelt their own doom. Mr. House, the hidden ruler of Vegas, awoke from his centuries-long slumber. Having observed the tribal battleground of the Mojave Wasteland, Mr. House quickly calculated which groups would be beneficial to his plans and which would not. The Khans flatly denied any entreaties of an alliance with House, declaring they have no master but their own. In response, House's Securitrons rolled out of the Lucky 38 and made a pact with 3 of the tribal groups who had suffered under the Khans' depredations. The 3 families, as they came to be known, were provided weapons, supplies, caps, ammunition, and even Securitron auxiliary support, and declared war against the Great Khans. The Khans stood their ground, but as powerful as they were no match for the United Tribals and House's robots. Their forces were pushed out of the northern settlements, exhausted, but not yet defeated. However, NCR forces had begun to push into the Mojave. The expedition was initially based on Aaron Kimball's self-proclaimed pacification of the Mojave, in order to bring to heel the tribes, such as the Great Khans, who had attacked NCR citizens. Despite their losses, many of the Khans were elated. The NCR were thought to be easy prey. War parties emerged from the north, pillaging and looting NCR outposts and settlements that began to appear. Some Great Khans were mentioned to simply go hunting for Republic men, women, and children, treating the conflict as mere sport. Papa Khan believed that the NCR would soon be brought into conflict with Mr. House and the 3 families, and sought to pillage as much as he could from their hated enemy before they were pushed from the region. Instead, House and the NCR signed the Treaty of New Vegas, and the new California Republic Army poured into the region to lay claim to its resources. With their position secured, the NCR turned the largest war machine of the post-war world against the Great Khans. The results were devastating. Great Khan atrocities were paid back in kind, with nearly all of their settlements razed by the NCR. The war came to a head, however, once the NCR army arrived at Bitter Springs. The valley of Bitter Springs was a fortified base of rocky hills and dangerous slopes. NCR intelligence had come to believe that the location housed the Great Khan's greatest warriors. As the main contingent of the NCR army tore into the camp, the 1st Recon sharpshooters were posted on a nearby ridge overlooking the rear exit of the camp, with orders to shoot to kill. However, most of the Khan warriors, including their leader, were conducting raids against the NCR at the time. Bitter Springs was merely where the Great Khans had left their elderly, their sick, their women, and children. As these non-combatants came fleeing out of the mountain pass, the sharpshooters radioed to confirm their orders. Still believing Bitter Springs to be the military stronghold it was, their superiors relayed to them to open fire. The massacre of Bitter Springs was a dark day for both the Khans and the NCR. The Republic annihilated the entirety of the Great Khan civilian base. Families were destroyed. Parents, spouses, and siblings mowed down by Republic bullets. Many Great Khans and even NCR soldiers came to suffer PTSD in the aftermath of what was labelled the Bitter Springs Massacre. The NCR, in a show of leniency, allowed the surviving Great Khan groups to resettle in Red Rock Canyon. The followers of the Apocalypse took pity on the decimated tribals, providing medical assistance to their wounded, and seeking to civilize the tribe by teaching them to read, write, and create their own medications. However, given that the Khans had long been users of narcotics, they perverted the teachings of the followers, using their newfound knowledge of chemistry to instead begin manufacturing chems. The reliance on chems has come to shape the Great Khan's identity in a post-Bitter Springs world. Red Rock Canyon is a desolate location. Very little natural crops or vegetation grow, and the land itself is too inhospitable for animal husbandry. Chem manufacturing and running has therefore become their primary export for necessary supplies to keep the tribe alive. Ironically, one of their largest customer bases has come to be the NCR itself. However, the accessibility of these chems and the trauma of Bitter Springs has caused a great deal of the Great Khans to turn into addicts. Red Rock Canyon itself is stated to reek from the fumes of Brahmin manure used to cultivate these chems, with Great Khans reduced a little more than junkies. Without their chems, the tribe will die. However, with the chems, the tribe will die. It's a dangerous catch-22, and it's one that their leader, Papa Khan, is unable to allow to stand. The surviving Great Khans, unsurprisingly, came to hate the Republic with more intensity than ever. At the time of Fallout New Vegas, the Great Khans have been lured into an alliance with Caesar's Legion for the upcoming Second Battle of Hoover Dam. Papa Khan is enticed by promises of Caesar's Frumentari, who make bold claims that the Khans will have all the lands east of Colorado, that their women will fight in the Legion army, and that their drug traffickers will be free to continue their operations. This is obviously a bold-faced lie. Caesar assimilates or destroys any tribes he comes across. Women are not permitted to serve in the Legion military, and narcotics and alcohol are punishable by death in Legion lands. The Great Khan's fall from grace has blinded Papa Khan to the dangers of joining the Legion, however, as he seeks only to be given the chance to murder the NCR. As mentioned at the beginning of this video, nearly every single one of the Great Khan's endings involve the tribe's destruction. If they choose to stand against the NCR or the Legion, and either faction wins, they are destroyed entirely. If they choose to side with the faction and they do win, they are either pushed off Red Rock Canyon by the NCR into a more inhospitable location where they inevitably die, or they're assimilated into the Legion with their tribal culture destroyed entirely. The other option is they are convinced to attack both sides and go out in a blaze of glory. However, there does lay one other path, which stands out as unique in that it truly is one of the only happy endings available to a faction in New Vegas. The Great Khans can be convinced that they no longer need to be held back by their past. They can be encouraged to forge a new destiny and leave the world as they know it behind. The endgame slides state that the Great Khans, with the assistance of the followers, carve a mighty empire in Wyoming with knowledge of governance, economics, and transportation. Of all the endings in New Vegas, this is one of the ones I like the most. One of the themes of New Vegas is that each group is in some way a regurgitation of the past. The wars and conflicts of the Mojave are much the same as they have always been, as war never changes. The Great Khans can be embroiled within this conflict and lose their lives, their identity, and their culture, no matter who they choose to side with. However, they can take the path less travelled and leave the Mojave much like they had when they left California. And yet, unlike the California Exodus, the Khans leave with a new outlook on who they are and what the world means to them. They have ruled large swaths of territory before, true, but the empire they build in the Northwest sounds like something entirely different. For one, the followers would not choose to help them again if they were continuing their chem manufacturing or raiding innocents. They're also stated to build this empire through economics, which implies a larger focus on trade compared to the looting and pillaging that the tribe was once known for. The Wyoming Empire is an ending I was always interested in, as the endgame slide differs so much from the others, and it would be fascinating to know what this may have looked like. In conclusion, the Great Khans are an incredibly interesting tribe. Many Wasteland residents and opposing factions view them as brutal savages, and this technically would not be untrue. The Great Khans have been known to be terrors of the Wasteland, taking what they want from those less fortunate. And yet, there is also a savage honesty to them as well. As their original designer had stated, they're a group who sees the world for what it is, rather than what it could be. The tough and lawless nature of their members is what keeps them alive in the Wasteland compared to other groups. And with 3 titles under their belt, this nature has kept them consisting as a faction longer than many others in the series.